There's a kind of silence that doesn't soothe. It doesn't calm, it doesn't bring peace. It's a silence that thickens the air, that builds walls where bridges once stood. This silence lives in many homes. It hides in glances not exchanged, in dinners shared without words, in birthdays remembered but not celebrated. It is the silence of resentment. Carl Jung believed that what we do not bring into consciousness appears in our lives as fate. Resentment is one of those unconscious forces. It begins so quietly, almost invisibly. It starts not with a scream, but with a sigh. A moment overlooked. A need unmet. A thank you that never came. And from there it grows. Slowly. Patiently. Like a seed planted in the soil of the soul. For women in the later chapters of life, this seed may have been buried for decades. Perhaps it was planted the day a dream was set aside for the sake of a family. Or when effort after effort to keep a household running went unnoticed, unthanked, unseen. Perhaps it sprouted when adult children no longer called except when they needed something. Or when a partner's presence turned into absence wrapped in routine. Not a departure, but a vanishing. A disappearance in plain sight. And yet no one talks about it. Because good women don't resent. They understand. They forgive. They endure. At least, that's what they were taught. That their love should be unconditional. That their worth is in their giving. That to speak of pain is to make others uncomfortable. And so they swallow it. Again and again. But the body remembers. The heart keeps score. The resentment grows roots. It starts to color everything. The joy of a grandchild's smile is dimmed by the ache that their own child never says thank you. The warmth of a shared meal is shadowed by the loneliness of never being asked, how are you really doing? Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, repress, and deny. Resentment is often part of that shadow. We deny it because it feels selfish. It feels like betrayal. But what if it's not? What if resentment is not the enemy, but the messenger? What if it comes to tell us something vital? That a boundary was crossed, that a need was ignored, that a part of us is asking to be seen. Imagine a woman in her 60s. She was the heart of her family. The one who held birthdays together, who nursed fevers, who remembered everyone else's needs before her own. Now her children are grown. Her partner, though present, no longer really sees her. Conversations are logistical, not emotional. There is no crisis. No drama. Just a slow, silent erosion. And in that silence, resentment whispers, did your life matter? Are you still visible? She might not say it aloud, but it shows. In the way her shoulders slump. In the hesitation before picking up the phone. In the quiet ache that lingers after family visits. She loves them, yes, but she also feels forgotten. And that feeling brings guilt. Because how dare she, right? How dare she feel this when she has so much to be grateful for? This is the poison of resentment. Not just that it isolates, but that it shames. It tells you that your pain is not valid, that your needs are too much, that your longings are selfish. And so, the cycle continues. But here is a radical thought. What if resentment is not shameful? What if it is sacred? What if it is a signal, a flare in the night, a call from the deepest part of your soul, saying, you matter. You have needs. You are still here. Jung believed individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, was a lifelong journey. Resentment, then, is not a detour but a signpost. It points to where healing is needed, where truth wants to be spoken, where the self has been sacrificed for the sake of peace. To begin this healing, we must first listen. Not judge, not suppress. Just listen. What is your resentment trying to tell you? When did you first feel it? What were you longing for? Perhaps you long to be seen, not just as a mother or a wife or a caregiver, but as a woman. With dreams, desires, depth. Perhaps you wanted someone to ask how you were, without expecting you to be strong. Perhaps you needed touch, tenderness, or time for yourself. And when that didn't come, you kept going. Because that's what you do. But a part of you never forgot. Resentment is memory, is the record of unacknowledged pain, but is also a doorway. If we walk through it with courage and compassion, we can begin to reclaim what was lost. We can begin to speak, not in anger but in truth. I feel invisible. That truth is not an accusation. It's a revelation. I miss being touched. That is not a complaint. It is a confession of the heart. I need to be seen. That is not selfish. It is sacred. When we name our pain, we make room for healing. We allow the people around us to meet us where we are. Some won't. Some can't. That is their journey. But some will. And even more important, you will. You will begin to see yourself. Not just as someone who served, but as someone who still is. A woman of worth, of presence, of voice. This is not about blame. It is about awakening. It is about turning toward the places that hurt with tenderness and saying, I hear you now. I will not abandon you. The silent seed of resentment grows in the dark. But if we bring it into the light, it can become something else. Something healing. Something real. Because under every resentment is a longing. And every longing is a prayer. And every prayer is a doorway. Some silences aren't born from your life. They were born in your mother's. And her mother's before her. They are inherited, like an heirloom nobody wanted. A look. A way of folding pain into politeness. A smile that hides disappointment. A silence that says, don't stir the waters. Don't make it worse. Just carry on. Carl Jung believed that the unresolved wounds of our ancestors don't disappear, they echo. They live in our nervous systems, our reactions, our relationships. The resentment you feel today may have started generations ago, shaped by women who never had permission to speak, to break, to rage, to be. Imagine your grandmother, a woman who gave her life to a family, a husband, a God, who perhaps never asked herself what she wanted because she was told it was selfish to want. Her silence became her safety. Her sacrifices were expected, never seen as extraordinary. She swallowed her needs so deeply they became invisible, even to her. And then your mother. Maybe she tried to rebel against that silence, or maybe she repeated it, faithfully, unknowingly. Maybe she resented her own mother for being cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. But she never said it aloud. Instead, she carried that ache into her own motherhood, tried to do better, sometimes did, but often, in the absence of models, ended up continuing the cycle. And now you who were the caregiver, the emotional glue, the one who anticipated everyone's needs before they even spoke them. You learned not from words, but from atmosphere. You absorbed the lesson. Love means giving until you disappear. And when you finally pause, at 55 or 65 or 75, there's a strange heaviness in your chest. A resentment that doesn't make sense. You love your family. You do anything for them. But there's a tightness. A tiredness. A part of you that wants to scream in a quiet room, I don't want to always be the strong one. This too is inherited. This is the grief of generations passed down in silence. Resentment, when inherited, often wears a mask. It doesn't always feel like anger. Sometimes it feels like fatigue, like a weight that has no name, like a voice inside that says, I shouldn't feel this way, even when the ache is undeniable. And that voice, it's not yours. It's a voice passed down, a legacy of silencing. It says, be grateful. Don't complain. Others have it worse. And while gratitude is sacred, forced gratitude is a prison. It locks away your truth. It invalidates your longing. There is an old grief in many women that says, I was never asked. I was never chosen. I was always expected. Jung taught us that to heal, we must make the unconscious conscious. The patterns we repeat without knowing are the ones that hold us captive. The resentment that lives in your bones might not be just yours. It might be your grandmother's silence, your mother's sorrow, asking to be finally witnessed. This is not about blaming them. They did what they could with what they had. But you are the turning point. You are the one who can say, this ends with me. This silence will not continue. Imagine sitting with your mother, not to accuse, but to understand. To ask, what did you lose that you never spoke of? Perhaps she won't know how to answer. Perhaps she will cry, or say nothing. But in the asking, a door opens. Imagine sitting with the memory of your grandmother, asking her silently, what were you never allowed to want? And letting the question soften you. This healing is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's tender. It's slow. It happens when you write a letter you never send. When you light a candle and speak your truth to the air. When you forgive, not because they asked, but because you no longer wish to carry what was never yours. It happens when you choose differently. When you tell your own daughter, you don't have to be perfect. When you let yourself rest. When you say no without guilt. When you stop over-explaining your needs. You are breaking a lineage of silence. And that is sacred work. Inherited resentment loses its power when it is named, when it is held, when it is seen. You are not weak for feeling it. You are strong for facing it. You are wise for honoring it. You are free for transforming it. And as you do, you are not only healing yourself, You are healing the women who came before you, and the ones who will come after. Because sometimes the most powerful legacy is the one where the silence ends. There is work that breaks the body, and there is work that breaks the soul. The second kind is harder to see. It doesn't leave bruises or bills. It leaves a hollow, a slow ache, a sense of being drained without knowing why. This is the emotional labor so many women carry. And when it goes unseen, unthanked, and unshared, it grows into resentment. For decades, you remembered birthdays. Not just of your children, but of their friends, their teachers, your partner's mother. You were the one who sensed when something was off, who knew by the tone of a hello that someone needed comfort. You adjusted yourself like soft clay, to keep the peace, to avoid a fight, to make others feel safe. But who did that for you? Carl Jung spoke of the feminine as the realm of intuition, connection, care. Yet, when the world exploits those qualities without reverence, they become burdens. What was sacred becomes invisible. How many times did you anticipate a need before it was spoken? How many times did you soothe a storm that wasn't yours? How many times did you hold your own grief in silence because someone else's pain felt louder? This labor is not recognized on a paycheck. It's not listed in an obituary, but lives in your bones. You remember being 12 and wiping your mother's tears. You remember being 28 and pretending not to be exhausted. You remember being 45 and saying, "It's fine, I'll take care of it," even when you were at your edge. And now at 60, you are tired in a way that sleep does not fix. There is a unique kind of resentment that forms from always being the one who notices, but never being noticed. From always being the one who remembers, but being forgotten. From always being the safe place, but having nowhere safe to land. This is not because others are cruel. It's because the culture taught them to expect your care as a given. Because being emotionally attuned was seen as a personality, not a skill. Not labor, but it is labor. And it is holy. To feel deeply. To hold others. To anticipate storms. To mediate tension. To make a home not just clean, but emotionally stable. This is profound work. And it deserves to be seen. Jung believed in the integration of all parts. Resentment is the part of you that says, "See me." Is the echo of all the times you were last on your own list. Is the voice that asks, "And when will I be held?" Maybe no one said thank you. Maybe no one saw the 100 small decisions you made to keep others okay. But I see them now. Every time you bit your tongue. Every time you remembered a detail that made someone feel loved. Every time you didn't cry because someone else needed you strong. This is emotional labor. And it builds a silent exhaustion when it is not shared. But here's the truth. You don't have to carry it all anymore. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to ask for the kind of care you so freely gave. This is not weakness. This is healing. Some people will not understand. They are used to your yes, your softness, your availability. When you change, they might resist. Let them. Change anyway. Say no with love. Say yes to yourself. Say, "I matter too." This is how resentment turns into reclamation. You do not need to explain your tiredness. You do not need to justify your desire for space, for solitude, for softness turned inward. You have earned it, not through sacrifice, but through your humanity. And if no one says thank you, say it to yourself. Say it every day. Look in the mirror and say, "Thank you for all you carried. Thank you for surviving your own forgetting. Thank you for returning to you." This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your self-seeing. The unseen labor shaped you, but does not have to define your future. You are allowed to be visible now, not just as the one who loves, but as the one who is loved, by herself. Strength, a word we were taught to wear like armor, a compliment, a virtue, a survival tactic. But what happens when strength stops being a choice and becomes a prison? Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." Many women resist their own vulnerability for years. Not because they lack softness, but because softness was unsafe. Because too often their strength was the only thing keeping the world from collapsing around them. So they became strong. For everyone. They held children when partners walked away. They worked 2 jobs while caring for aging parents. They buried their own dreams quietly so others could pursue theirs loudly. They stayed calm in chaos, dependable in crisis, cheerful in pain. But here's what no one tells you. Being the strong one comes at a cost. It costs tenderness. It costs softness. It costs the ability to ask for help. It costs being held. And most painfully, It costs the right to not be okay. Over time, this kind of strength breeds resentment, not just toward others, but toward life itself. Because strength becomes expected, and expectations become cages. You become the person who can handle anything. So no one asks how you're doing. You become the one who never breaks. So no one offers to help carry the weight. You become the strong one. So no one sees the sadness behind your smile. Even worse, you start to forget how to express what you need. Because for so long, you were the answer, not the question. You answer every call. You show up when no one else does. You find solutions, calm storms, manage logistics and emotions and meals and milestones. But who shows up for you? It's not that they don't love you. It's that they believe you're invincible. And maybe you let them. Because admitting otherwise felt like failure. But you are not a failure. You are a human being with limits. And naming those limits is not weakness. It's wisdom. Jung's path of individuation calls us to reclaim all parts of ourselves, the ones we exiled in service of roles and responsibilities. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to carry what breaks you. You don't have to apologize for your needs. Yes, you held the world together. But it's time to hold yourself. Being the strong one made you dependable. But it also made you tired. You miss being held. You miss softness. You miss the part of you that once believed she could fall apart and still be loved. Here is the truth. You can. You still can. Resentment is the voice that says, I've held too much for too long. So how do you begin to let go? How do you step out of the armor? Start small. Say I don't know. Say I can't today. Say I need help. Let it feel strange. Let it feel raw. But say it anyway. Let others surprise you. Let them hold space for your softness. And if they don't, that is their limitation, not your unworthiness. You don't need to prove your strength anymore. You already did that. Now it's time to prove your softness is just as sacred. There is no medal for exhaustion. No trophy for self-sacrifice. No prize for emotional solitude. But there is freedom. In honesty. In asking. In saying, I matter too. So here's to the woman who has been strong for everyone else. May she now be strong enough to be soft for herself. May her strength become choice, not armor. May her strength include her tears, her rest, her voice. May she put down what was never hers to carry. May she step out of the cage, not with fury, but with grace, not with resentment, but with reclamation, not to abandon others, but to finally return to herself. There is a hunger that does not live in the stomach. It lives beneath the skin, behind the eyes, in the center of the chest where hands once rested, where glances once lingered. It is the hunger to be touched, to be held, to be seen, to be chosen, not out of duty, but desire. Carl Jung once said that loneliness is not the absence of people, but the inability to express things that matter. And what matters more than the need to feel wanted, embraced, desired, even after the world has labeled us older? Many women live decades in relationships where touch has faded, where the shared bed has become a quiet border, where physical affection is rare and emotional intimacy rarer still. And they begin to wonder, did I become invisible? This question does not come from vanity. It comes from a very human truth. We need to be felt to know we exist. In our youth, touch is everywhere. A parent's hand, a lover's embrace, a child's small fingers. But as the years pass, the world grows quieter around us. Partners stop reaching. Children grow and move on. Friends grow cautious with age and boundaries. And suddenly, the woman who spent her life in closeness begins to drift in distance. Even in the same room, even in the same home, the absence of touch is not just physical. It is emotional. When no one asks how you feel, when no one looks long enough into your eyes to see beyond your smile, you begin to feel like a ghost in your own life. And the resentment creeps in, not just toward others, but toward the passage of time, toward the self that adapted, adjusted, accepted. You begin to wonder if you asked for too little, or if you stopped asking altogether. This longing to be touched, it is not weakness. It is not shameful. It is deeply human. It is sacred. You are not too old for desire. You are not too late for affection. You are not too much for love. Jung believed that individuation, our journey to wholeness, requires that we reclaim the parts we've exiled. Many women exiled their sensuality, not out of choice, but out of survival. They were mothers, workers, caregivers, providers. They were tired. And tired women often forget they are also flesh and soul, hunger and softness. But that part of you is not gone. She is waiting. waiting to be invited back, waiting to dance, to feel the warmth of skin, to be touched with reverence, not expectation. And if you're not touched, touch yourself, not in shame, but in love. Run your hands over your own arms and say, "You are here. You are mine. You are beautiful." Look in the mirror and see not the lines but the life, not the changes but the courage. And speak your need, not with apology but with truth. Say to your partner, "I miss being touched." Say to your reflection, "I deserve to feel alive." This is how we bring resentment into the light, by admitting what we have hidden, by honoring what we have silenced. Some partners will not understand. Some may be afraid of this change in you. But some will listen. Some will learn. Some will reach back. And if they don't, you still can. You can reach for yourself. You can reach for life. Through music. Through dance. Through art. Through long walks in sun-drenched afternoons. Touch is not only of skin. It is of soul. It is of presence. Let your own presence become touch. Let your breath become blessing. Let your body become sacred again, not for others but for you. Because you are not too late. You are right on time. And the longing you carry? It is not a burden. It is a compass. It points you back to yourself, to the place where you are loved, to the place where you are held, to the place where the silence ends.